I'd like to know about those door handles, please.
I got a Porsche. She went to the Harry Potter studios, so everyone's happy.
So we've nailed it. We've nailed it. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Traction Control podcast, your weekly dose of sim racing and racing game news and discussion and utter nonsense. I am John. I am not Tom Harrison Lord, because for the first time in what feels like ever, THL, or our very own Captain Venerated, is having a day off. Now, Tom Bunten, what do you think THL gets up to on a day off? Because that is a difficult question.
I think he is reading some kind of automotive history or catching up on some sort of automotive magazine. Maybe there's a small Monday car show somewhere in North Yorkshire that he's visiting. Or maybe he has like an off button. You know, he just off. So it's either cars and sim racing or off. Who knows? I'm excited to find out though.
I am too. We're also joined by the CEO of NotKillRacingCircuit.gg, Ross McGregor. What do you think THL gets up to on his day off?
Well, referring to Tom's point there, I don't think THL has an off switch. So I think he will be doing something car-related. And yes, it will be in Yorkshire.
Well, I have a theory on this. I reckon he's still at Le Mans and he's still telling me about the new Alpine's door handles, but he hasn't realised that I've gone home yet. So that's what I think he's doing. He's going to turn around at any minute now and realise, where's John gone? Oh, okay.
I'd like to know about those door handles, please.
Yeah, well, we'll get him on next week again to talk about it. So unfortunately, for you guys listening or watching on YouTube, you are stuck with the three of us. I do just want to give a quick plug, speaking of YouTube, to the Traction Control Podcast YouTube channel. We are very, very close to 2,000 subscribers. So if you watch on a visual version on YouTube as opposed to Spotify, and you fancy giving us a little bit of a lift, hit that subscribe button and we will hit that 2K before you know it. We're also nearing 150,000 subscribers on YouTube, which we hope to aim for by the end of the year on the main Traction GG YouTube channel. So hit the subscribe button, help us out on the YouTube side. That would be amazing. What have you guys been up to? I think, Tom, you were sim racing, but in a kind of somewhere other than your own house this week, I believe.
I visited a sim racing centre called Vroom in Brighton, right next to Brighton Marina. I hadn't been before, and I was pleasantly surprised. It's really nicely done. I think there's probably, I have to go back tonight and count, but I think there's about 12 simulators, maybe, triple screens, motion, Moser wheelbases. And I didn't really know it was there. I was walking past and I saw the Formula One on the TV, and it was the grid walk was going on. I thought, oh, perfect! I'm gonna go in there, see if I can grab some chips and watch the race. And I walked in. It was a sim racing centre. It was fantastic, and there must have been a couple of dozen people there watching the Formula One. And now I've watched Formula One in the pub before, but I haven't been around fans that were this into it before. Obviously, other than being at the race, obviously, I cannot quite describe the scenes when Lewis Hamilton put it on P1. People, I did think there was a couple of people that were about to start crying. So yeah, it was good. It was good. Good day. It was a good weekend with a bit of sim racing, a bit of motorsport, and a bit of sunshine.
Nice. I actually Googled the Vroom Sim Racing Centre in Brighton, and the AI overview said, did you mean VR simulators in Glasgow? And I actually used a source from the Vroom Sim Racing Centre to tell me about why it was VR simulators in Glasgow that I was trying to Google. So, work that one out.
No, everything's about Scotland.
Well, I was speaking of, Ross, anything you were up to racing game related other than watching Scotland absolutely destroy, or should I say squeak past Haiti?
No, this weekend has been quite dull. Instead, I'd like to talk about last weekend when I embarked on a perilous journey to London, the Big Smoke. And
have you been that far south ever before?
That is the furthest south I've ever been in Britain. So I was in London for a short while, went to Slough on a train and picked up a Porsche, my first Porsche. So I drove that all the way from Slough to Kinross over 2 days because my wife was there and she insisted we go to the Harry Potter studios on the way up. So yeah. So it was a mixed bag.
Very nice.
I got a Porsche, she went to the Harry Potter studios, so everyone's happy.
This is what you get when THL isn't here. You get 7 minutes of waffle before we get into any actual sim racing and racing game news. So yeah, you'll be looking forward to getting THL back next week. We are going to now fire into the news and things. I have been at Le Mans for a couple of days, but not to watch the racing, because we were actually there to check out a brand new steering wheel. Thrustmaster has unveiled its Ferrari 499p Centenary Winners Edition steering wheel. Now, this costs €851. Obviously, the 51 in the price tag relating to the car number 51, which won the 100th edition of the Le Mans 24 Hour in 2023. And it is the most expensive and premium steering wheel Thrustmaster has ever produced. Comes with a poster, which is like a kind of blueprint of how the wheel has been made, and also a Ferrari 51 winning poster. You also have a wheel mount, which you can put onto a desk and basically light the wheel up with a cable and make it look all fancy on your desk instead of actually putting it on your rig. It also comes with a nice box. It comes with a plaque, and your specific steering wheel that you own has a number associated to it. There are only 499 of these being produced, so it's very much limited edition. Tom, what did you think when you saw our video covering this wheel?
Well, my first thought was it's Thrustmaster's first foray into the higher end, right? They've got fairly substantial direct drive wheelbase already, but for a wheel rim, this is not Thrustmaster's comfort zone, I would say, when it comes to pricing. My other thought was licensed wheel rims. Are they the only differentiator left in the market? And what I mean by that is, how much further can the technology go for wheelbases and wheel rims really to make a huge step up on what already exists? Once we went from belt driven to direct drive, that was kind of it. And then it was more and more powerful direct drive and fidelity this and, consistent torque outputs. But by and large, we're pretty much there, right, with what sim racing hardware can do through your hands. And so how do you stand out? Well, the only way you can stand out really is the visuals of it. And the best way to stand out with the visuals is to slap on a logo that means something to people. So I think it makes total sense. I think they've gone in the most logical direction.
The extras also for me stand out because, how do we make this product a little more special than just another replica steering wheel? We add extra spice, an extra occasion, right? Where we add extra features to make it feel like an occasion when you purchase this wheel, such as the box and the stand and the poster, and make it really feel personal to you. So obviously that puts the price up a lot, right? But this wheel is not for your casual sim racer. It's for someone who enjoys Ferrari, enjoys Le Mans, and wants to own a little piece of history. Obviously, this car has won the race now 3 times, so it is a pretty special vehicle.
What happens when they do a discount, right? So it's 851 now, and the 51 is meaningful. Let's say Black Friday rocks around and it's 10% off. Well, then it would be €765.90. So if we take the final 2 digits of the full euros, that's 65, right? So 65 is the new number. Are there any famous Le Mans 65s?
Well, good news for you. The last time Ferrari won overall at Le Mans was 1965, before the Centenary Edition.
John.
So we've nailed it.
John,
we've nailed it.
I'm going to have to, right. So whilst you were talking, I used AI, right, to find whether there were any famous 65s. And it said, for the 1965 Le Mans, the race is famous for a entirely different number, the victorious number 21 Ferrari. So you are basically faster and better than AI, which I know is a topic we're going to come to later. I'm floored.
Who needs Captain Venerated?
Yeah, I think we missed a trick because I don't know how it felt in person, John, but it looked quite plasticky to me. So I would kind of go that it should be really €499 rather than 851.
Now, let's be fair here. This is the most premium product Thrustmaster has ever made. I think the price is inflated because of the additional extras that you get with it. So that's who you're selling it for. I think it was a bit of both, right? I think it did feel high quality. It felt very sturdy. There's plenty of carbon fiber weave in there. But there were elements of it that did feel a little bit kind of cheap in that sense. I don't think it was the most premium steering wheel I've ever held. Let's put it that way. Again, I really didn't have much time to test it properly in terms of being able to give you a kind of full-on review over a long period. But there were elements like the kind of D-pad joystick that did feel very kind of soft. And I did feed that back to Thrustmaster as well. So it's not the most premium wheel you've ever seen, but I can understand the price point given all the extras you get with it. Didn't mention the fact you also get a copy of Le Mans Ultimate and the DLC, or the current DLC, with that too. So bit strange, you might already own that stuff and it doesn't really mean much to you, but it's another thing that kind of inflates the price and makes it more of a special purchase. So anyway, as I say, you can watch the video, you can offer your own views on that. However, it wasn't the only Le Mans related product to release over the Le Mans weekend, because I know, Ross, you wrote an article on the Traxion website covering a new Aston Martin Valkyrie inspired sim racing rig. So Curve Racing Simulators, headed by Darren Turner, who is a Le Mans winning driver himself, have released the AMR C01R Hypercar cockpit, which is basically a carbon fiber cockpit, £58,000, so not cheap at all, inspired by the Aston Martin Valkyrie. Looks cool, but there are only 24 units ever made. So we're talking about limited edition numbers of products relating to Le Mans 24-hour things. This is very, very limited. What did you think of this, Ross?
I just thought it was another piece of like unobtainium, because there's been a sequence of like Aston Martin carbon fiber cockpits. There's been like two or three or four in the last couple of years, and they all look kind of similar and they do similar things. And it's just like, it's not for us. It's not for normal people. It's for Lawrence Stroll, I think, rather than Ross McGregor, for example. So yeah.
Nah, not for Porsche owners like yourself, no?
Yeah, Ross McGregor, the Porsche owner.
I have to preface that by saying that it's an old Porsche. It's not a new Porsche, so I can't afford a new Porsche. A very old Porsche, yes. I can't afford to run it. So if something goes wrong, I'm absolutely snookered. So
it is nice, though. I did have a little seat in it the other day. But we're going to move on, because we're not going to get distracted by waffle. I'm going to do my job here and keep us moving. There was a reasonable sim racing presence at Le Mans, as you'd expect. We didn't get time to see everything because we were on a quite tight schedule. We didn't finish filming until after midnight with the Thrustmaster wheel. But the BMW stand did have Le Mans Ultimate running, where you could drive the BMW hypercar. Ford also had some sim rigs in its stand, but they were running Gran Turismo 7, which was interesting. Alpine had some track racer rigs in their stand as well. So this was all part of the kind of manufacturer village. So members of the public could come and have a go on some sims as well as look at some cars. So that was cool. The thing that probably caught my eye the most was a Peugeot Polygon concept, where basically there was a Peugeot Polygon concept car on a stand, and then next to it you could drive a modded version of R Factor 2 around a sort of weird fictional futuristic Monte Carlo circuit, which was like Monaco but times 2 in scale and with more corners squeezed in between the existing corners, and you were driving through neon tunnels and all sorts of stuff. But the steering wheel was actually the steering wheel from the Peugeot Polygon concept, basically like a dinner tray slapped vertically that you could drive with 4 big circles on the steering wheel. I can't explain it, you'll have to look it up yourself. But that was a very bizarre experience and something a bit different, which was nice to see. However, Le Mans Ultimate, Ross, haven't really done anything big for this year's Le Mans. In the past, they've obviously released the game around Le Mans. This year, it's the 2026 season pass, and it's our 2026 season update, I should say, with the new liveries and things like that, and also a free LMP3 car, but no kind of major feature, no new DLC announcements or anything. So it's been a bit of a quiet year for Le Mans Ultimate at Le Mans.
Yeah, it was a bit quiet, especially given the last couple of years when there's been big announcements. But they're obviously working on the kind of console port that's coming next year. And there's also the small matter of a big announcement on July the 4th, which we wonder could be maybe American tracks. So yeah, it's going to be there are going to
what
be...
What makes you think that?
Because, of course, it's Independence Day. So... like, we shouldn't worry that nothing big's been announced, because I think it's leading up to that, so we should be good. And hopefully we do get American tracks like Road America and Daytona and stuff like that.
We'll obviously keep you updated as we hear more and get official announcements on the Traxion.gg website. I'm going to move things on from Le Mans. We're going to talk about Automobilista 2 again, because we spoke about it briefly last week. We're here again, and it's been a bit of a strange week for AMS2. It's been in a bit of a pickle, because today there was a new track pack released, Historic Track Pack Part 4, which contains 2 historic versions of the Barcelona circuit from 1999 and 2001. They're not going to be too different, you would imagine. Imola 2005, Indianapolis 2001, Spielberg 2001, so the Red Bull Ring as it's known nowadays, and also Monza 2005, as well as a Hungaroring release and some new Renault Formula One cars. Now, these Renault Formula One cars were going to be coming to the game as paid DLC until they weren't, because of some interesting contractual licensing roadblocks involving McLaren Racing. What did you think of this, Ross, when you were writing about it? Because it sounds another piece of confusing contractual licensing red tape.
Yeah, so AMS2 has like previous form on this because they had like a modern Indy car a couple of years ago, ready to go, and they couldn't secure a license for it. So and if you remember, the 2005 Endurance Pack as well had like a Ferrari that was like unlicensed. So now last week on the Razor forums, it suggested that they couldn't keep Renault, Brabham, and Lotus Formula One cars in the game as, you know, branded licensed entities, because McLaren Racing had like a stipulation in their licensing contract that said that they couldn't appear in the game at the same time. So it's all very confusing because this kind of played out over multiple forum posts, and I was like kind of watching a car crash in slow motion because all this information kind of drip fed out, and it's like you kind of think maybe you guys could have just held back a bit from posting this stuff until it was all kind of decided and, you know, we knew what was going to happen. So the upshot is the Renault F1 cars have been released. So it's the R25, R26 and R28. The first two are obviously Fernando Alonso's championship winner one. The last one's the Crashgate one. So they've been released for free. And if you own AMS2 right now, they will stay like in-game as Renault F1 cars. And so like the historic Brabham and Lotuses, they will stay in-game. But I guess at some point in the future, once this McLaren deal this licensing deal's been signed, this new deal, that new customers of AMS2 will no longer get those branded cars. So it's quite confusing, and you kind of wonder if why did they play this out in like so many forum posts when they could have just like consolidated in one at a later date just to let everyone know all the details at the time. It's very confusing.
Yeah, it was also confusing for us. We actually did mention AMS2 and this update, or things relating to this update, in our full YouTube video about why this month is crucial for the racing game industry and could be a big point. But we actually had to edit it out because obviously behind the scenes there were things changing and moving parts. We thought we'd be able to cover certain elements. We then all of a sudden weren't, but we'd already recorded it. So that's why, if you're wondering, there was no mention of AMS2 in that video, because we had actually spoken about it, but what we were able to say changed and we couldn't re-record it. So yeah, all a little bit messy. I will just give a big bit of credit to the fact that we have 6 new tracks coming to the game, including historic tracks. AMS2 does historic tracks brilliantly well, and it's great to see more of those coming to the game. Kudos to that. Obviously, New Hungaroring. The Renault F1 cars are cool as well. I've had the shot in them, and they are interesting to drive, as you would expect. Much lighter and more nimble than current cars, but maybe lacking that overall downforce with the groove tires and things like this. So very, very interesting. I know, Tom, licensing is sort of just a big talking point in racing games in general at the moment.
Yeah, it frustrates me every time you hear stories about car brands making it difficult for games to get their cars in front of kids who might one day then aspire to drive that car, right? You know, it's probably not outrageous to suggest that a lot of people who buy a Porsche, for example, probably played with, you know, Lego Porsches or drove Porsches in Gran Turismo or whatever game when they were a kid, right? Russ, I mean, sample size of one. Did you interact with the Porsche brand as a kid?
I surely did, yes.
Well, so exactly, and it's a long tail marketing or whatever you would want to call it, right? But it's building up that brand affinity, brand loyalty from a much younger age. I just think that some of the brands overthink what they're achieving by putting their cars in. So McLaren, for example, saying, well, we want to be the only Formula One car in the game. Like, why could that be? Is that because they want that they wouldn't have control over which cars had the BOP in the game, or they wouldn't want the McLaren to be the slowest F1 car in the game? Like, what's the logic for that? I really struggle to understand why car brands wouldn't want their cars in as many games as possible so that people could quote unquote, experience the brand, fall in love with it, build up a subconscious loyalty over 10, 15 years. That there could be a whole load of reasons in the background, but I can't think of what they might be.
So just to be specific on this, I think it only applies to the Formula One cars. So it could be a Formula One management kind of thing, but again, we don't know, so we can only speculate. But one thing I'd like to say is, I've got a question for both of you. Do you think this licensing sort of thing playing out in public, is it refreshingly honest from Reza, or is it maybe not great, not a great look?
Well, I didn't want to interrupt you earlier when you were saying that, but when you said why have they put it drip fed the information rather than consolidate it into one? When you said that, my first thought was, well, if they consolidate it into one, then there would be an argument to say, well, why were they not more transparent up front? All we want is honesty. All we want is transparency. And so maybe that's their kind of modus operandi, right? Which is just to, as they know things, say it, and then at least you can't be accused of being dishonest or covering things up or not telling the whole truth. I do wonder what the brands on the other side of that situation thought about it playing out quite so haphazardly.
I think yes to both, Ross, honestly, as well. I think that there is, for a consumer, it's difficult to follow when there's lots of big posts about different things and it changes one week to the next. Like, obviously, that's very difficult for anyone to actually take in and understand and know. So therefore, only the really hardcore users are going to be reading these posts in detail and actually fully understanding the picture. But I actually think it's good to be this transparent about things like licensing and contracts. It might not actually benefit Reza, but I think from a consumer's point of view, you can actually, for once, go, oh, well, okay, they've done this thing that I don't like or I don't understand, but hey, I now know why. And actually, from their perspective, it kind of makes sense, because that's not always something we can say when talking about racing game updates or changes or things being removed. So much of it is speculation from the public, and the game developers don't quite know whether they can say things or not say things. And I think transparency is good in that way, but obviously in a more sort of understandable and condensed form might have been nice. Again, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm going to move things on to another sort of industry related subject. The Stop Killing Games campaign has been in the news recently. There was actually a BBC News report in the UK just around about a week ago about this campaign. So it's becoming actual widespread news rather than just racing game specific news. And basically it's a campaign that's been started to try and prevent game developers and publishers from selling you a video game and then essentially kiboshing it years later by shutting off the servers when they are online only, so you can no longer actually access or play the game that you once purchased. This all came about in 2024 when Ubisoft essentially ended the Crew, shut down all the servers, and this game that you may have purchased, the Crew, was no longer playable in a kind of offline mode at all. You'd basically just owned the game but couldn't actually access it. So it is sort of racing game related, which is interesting, even though it's a wider video game industry question. My question to you guys, with Grid Legends recently also shutting down their PlayStation and Xbox servers, so this is actually also affecting current news. Do you think this campaign getting more publicity is good? And do you think that from a racing game perspective specifically, this is something that we should really be pushing, or do you disagree?
Well, I can see the arguments both sides, right? So if let's say you create a game that's going to cost you an amount of money, and then it goes live, you have multiplayer servers, that's going to cost you an amount of money on a regular basis. If people then stop buying that game because the game has kind of come to the end of its shelf life, are you then expected to pay for the maintenance of that experience for 1,000 years? Obviously, that's being dramatic, but there's got to be a line somewhere, right? Because people are going to stop buying the game, and so you're not going to have an income. However, I would say that that's the game's problem, not the consumer, right? So I would like to see some kind of regulation whereby if you're going to shut down your game, you have to at least to put in place a plan for, servers are going to go peer-to-peer, so you can still do your multiplayer racing because you paid for the game forever, but perhaps the functionality or the hosted daily racing or whatever is no longer a thing. I expect that the answer is that actually this is all in the terms and conditions that we all definitely read when you download a game, and it says that they reserve the right to shut down multiplayer and online features basically whenever they want to, and there's nothing you can do about it. But yeah, I think it's quite. I'm glad that it's been brought to the fore, as they say, because it's a good point. Not everybody can afford to buy a new game every single month, and you might buy couple of games a year, and if you've got your favourites, then being turned off after 4 or 5 years is I would say that is unfair. However, I don't think we should just say right from now on all games that exist have to keep paying monthly cost for their servers forever, because games already have a huge expense base that they need to cover. So I don't think it's a simple one, but I do think it's right that we start talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't expect developers to keep like online servers going forever. So there has to be like provision for like a single player element to kind of persist into the future. So yeah, it's one of those things with like games going digital versus physical, for example, because I think there's some games that have been part of this. Like I think it was The Crew, like you could play physical versions of The Crew, like no problem, but you couldn't play the digital versions. I can't remember. I might be wrong there. Might have to do some research. But there was a game like that was digital, and it was delisted, and it was like, well, I've just bought this and it's gone. What do I do? So there has to be a provision for like a game like that to persist into the future, even if it's just a single player element.
Yeah, I think if there's some sort of provision that says when you develop a game, and let me just say straight away, I don't understand the complexities of the cost of game development, so I don't know if this is even feasible. But if there's some sort of stipulation that says you must develop your game in a way where there is at least some element of single player alternative that you can keep playing this game when the online servers are inevitably shut down. And I know it's very confusing with all the contract costs, or the server costs, I should say, for maintaining servers, and also the licensing costs, because I think licensing is a big part of this. If you've got a live service update game, you're paying a license on a yearly basis. To be able to keep selling that game and running that game, you potentially need to continue to purchase licenses. So it's obviously complicated. There's a reason why developers do it. They don't want to ruin the experience for the users. They've obviously just taken a decision at some point that this is financially the only way to go. So yeah, we just need more stipulation early on in the process, I guess, or more transparency, like forced transparency from the developers that, hey, you're buying a license to play this game for a period of time, not actually own the game outright, if that makes any kind of sense. So yeah, interesting to see how that develops.
If you look at like Forza Horizon games, they get delisted after, is it 4 or 5 years? And it's because of licensing, because obviously they've got like 500-600 cars that need licenses, and these licenses naturally expire. So yes, the game gets delisted, but you can still buy it before that delisting happens, and you get to play the game, for as long as you want. So that's kind of what you'd expect, and what I think should happen in the future.
We're going to do a quick news roundup just before we get into Full Send and Dead End. So I'm going to rattle off some things that have been happening in the previous week. We have 3 game demos that I think are of note. Kaido Genkai has had its demo release, which is an anime racing RPG, sort of an open world racing game set in 90s Japan. Looks a little bit like Automobilista for anyone who remembers that game. And I love the art style. I'm very much looking forward to checking that out. Not the only demo released this week. Car Wash Simulator has also released a demo. That's probably all I need to say on that one. And also Over the Hill, which is the latest game by Fun Selector and Strelka Games, the creator, of course, of Art of Rally and Absolute Drift, as well as Golden Lap more recently. I've been playing that demo, by the way, and it is glorious. It's a sort of a cozy off-road adventure game. You drive around through the mountains, down paths, across rivers, all these sorts of different environments, just basically finding things to collect with a beautiful original soundtrack. And it's co-op. You can, winch to your friends, you can winch to the trees, you can help each other explore the map and learn things. And it's just honestly such a pleasant cozy gaming experience. And cozy gaming is not something that I often experience in a sort of driving game specifically.
I think I'm at that stage of life now where I'm also quite keen on driving games that are not necessarily competitive, i.e. you can experience driving without the need to win. There is no winner. It's just an experience. Sim racing obviously has its place, and there's nothing quite like the feeling of being on the grid at the beginning of a race you've been practicing for. I love it, but there's also a time and a place for I'd like to do some driving, but I don't want to try and win. I just want to have some fun. And I think if you look at the Traxion GG website, if you ever scroll through our latest news, you'll see that the balance between sim racing and driving experiences now, I feel like recently in the last couple of months, there's been absolutely loads of new and developing driving experience, automotive culture games, games, driving and racing games that are not just about sector times, right? Even Clutch, right? Clutch is looking more like a car culture game than it is about a hardcore, tenths and hundredths game. Hence the grappling hook, which my feelings about. But yes,
you've made your
overall,
feelings very clear about the grappling hook, Tom.
I have. But overall, I'm a big fan of it. I'm all for the cozy, casual driving experiences.
Yeah, cozy gaming as a genre also opens us up to non-racing game fans and potentially introduces new audiences into driving games, although they're not necessarily an audience that's going to cross over into other things. So it's good for Fun Selector and Strelka games, not necessarily massive for the kind of driving game industry. I will talk you through briefly some other things. Rensport has added Sebring and Laguna Seca for free, plus improved the AI. So I'm looking forward to giving that a shot to see what changes have been made. The very popular Snow Runner game has released on Switch 2, and it's actually available now. So handheld version of Snow Runner sounds great to me. Golden Lap is also heading to mobile. Speaking of ports, that will be coming next month. And NASCAR 26 has finally officially been confirmed as happening, which leads us on to, after a quick mid-roll interruption, Full Send or Dead End. So for those of you who are new to the podcast, Full Send or Dead End is a section where I read out a statement and my colleagues will tell me whether they agree or disagree. Full Send is agree, Dead End is disagree, and then we will discuss why. So, first one, a new NASCAR game every year is the right cadence for iRacing Studios. Tom, Full Send or Dead End?
Dead End.
Ross?
Full Send.
Cool. I think I'm going to go Full Send. Sim racing hardware is oversaturated. This is a bad thing for sim racers. Tom?
Dead End.
Ross?
Oh, tricky. Full Send.
All right, I'm going to go Dead End for that one. And finally, BeamNG.Drive will be a big success on PlayStation 5. Tom?
Full Send.
Ross?
This is a tricky one, so I'm going to say Dead Send.
Dead Send. Half-hearted lunge for Ross. I'm going to go Full Send. Let's do it. All right, so we'll circle back. So, a new NASCAR game every year is the right cadence. Ross, why is that the case?
Basically because every season drivers change, cars change, track layouts change. So a yearly release just makes sense, I suppose.
Tom, you disagree?
I wholeheartedly disagree because it is essentially just a skin change, right? It's a skin change. There's different driver names, but the engine underneath the game continues to develop. So for me, I would prefer to see a core game, a core engine, a core multiplayer ecosystem that continues to evolve over years and years and years, and you just buy the DLC packs if you want the new driver names and the new car skins, the liveries. We hope and pray that's the way that F1 is going, and I think NASCAR should do the same thing.
So I'm actually more in Ross's camp with this one as well, just because I think NASCAR as a sport is so big in America, and it's the perfect game for like a young person coming into sim racing or racing games or gaming in general. I think it's the perfect sort of Christmas present. My only concern is that this game, or NASCAR 25 at least, was not available as a physical disc version. I think this is the perfect sort of game for a physical copy where you can go to a shop, pick up this game for your grandkid or your kid or your friend or your cousin. And I think having yearly NASCAR games just works for that sort of demographic who will just buy the most recent year because they've been watching the sport. They want to drive as their favorite driver in the current liveries. I feel like this type of game, because it doesn't need too many iterations each year, can get away with it. And maybe I'm looking at this more from like how to be successful as a game from iRacing Studios' perspective rather than the consumer's perspective. So maybe I'm kind of tainted a little bit there, but I just think this is the sort of racing game for me that does make sense as a yearly release because of that. But I can totally see both ways. And please, iRacing Studios, make NASCAR 26 available as a physical release, because I think that would make a lot of sense for anyone going to still buying games physically, although it's not as big a thing as it used to be, I do admit. We'll move on. Sim racing hardware is oversaturated. This is a bad thing for sim racers. Now, Tom, I'll come to you first. Why did you say what you said? Because I've forgotten what you said.
I said dead end. I think competition is good. I think competition. You get two things. You'll kind of get a race to the top and a race to the bottom, right? So you'll get people that will try and reduce the costs as much as they can to claim the budget market, which is great for people that don't have a huge amount of disposable income. Just having anything to race on is great, and I think the quality of that lower end will increase too. And then it'll also be a race to the top, right? People will be trying to find these new differentiators, whether it's particular car licenses or what's the word I'm trying to say? Imitations. I kept thinking of the word that THL writes in all of his articles. Inimitable. Okay. Probably cut that out. I think I just had a stroke.
Keep it in.
Yeah, I think that there'll be a creation of more imitation wheels, which is great. I just can't see a way that competition is bad for the consumer. I think it will drive quality, but it will also drive the economic end of the market. So yeah, I can't see an argument for not having more options.
Ross?
Here is the argument. So, as someone that reviews a lot of sim racing hardware, my garage is absolutely chock full of steering wheels and shifters and everything. And I don't know what any of it does. Like, it just looks the same to me. It's just like there's nothing that stands out. And I kind of wonder, are people feeling a bit disillusioned? So the question was, is sim racing hardware oversaturated? This is a bad thing for sim racers. Specifically, this is a bad thing for me because I don't have time to review all the hardware. So if these manufacturers could just release one thing per year, I'd really appreciate that, because then I could work on other stuff.
I like that very personal take. The reason I've gone in Camp Tom Bunten is because I think it's a bad thing potentially for the brands making the products, but I think it's a good thing for sim racers. So I do expect that many manufacturers that exist now will not exist in a couple of years, simply because there are so many manufacturers and brands fighting over the same space in terms of consumers. Sim racing is still niche. There are only so many people looking for new sim racing gear, and as the gear gets better, you have less of a need to replace that gear. So nowadays, the top end stuff is a bit more accessible than it used to be. To have like a good direct drive base, you can spend a reasonably reasonable amount of money to get that. Therefore, you do not need to upgrade from that point for many years, maybe until something goes wrong, or if you just decide, technology's moved on. So I think you're fighting over a very small audience, and you've got so many options and products. Obviously, it's amazing for the consumer because they get cheaper products, competition drives the prices down. They get better quality products, competition drives the product quality up. And they have more options and choices to buy something that fits them, because not every manufacturer makes something that works for everyone. Some people can now focus on, let's do the perfect wheel for someone drifting, or let's do the perfect base for a rally fan, or whatever it might be, right? But not good for the brands, good for the sim racer. That's basically it for that one. And I don't care about Ross's garage full of equipment, because I don't have to worry. But actually, I do care about it, because once Ross's garage fills up, then it ends up at mine, and I'm already full as well, and I don't have a garage to put my stuff in. So I do care about that, actually. Sorry,
Where
Ross.
will you put the Porsche?
Well, exactly. You can put that in mine if you want. BeamNG.Drive will be a big success on PlayStation 5. Now, there was a half-hearted lunge in there from Ross. Did you pull off the move or not?
So in terms of a big success, I think it'll be a sales success. But I think that technically it's going to be really tricky to port this from PC to PlayStation 5. If you saw the initial trailer that was kind of filmed on the PlayStation 5, the graphics didn't look great. So yeah, I think it'll be a huge sales success, but I'm kind of on the fence on whether technically BeamNG can actually perform on the PS5.
I actually agree with Ross. I was thinking basically commercially only. When you read it out, BeamNG will be a big success on PlayStation 5. In my head, I just thought, I think it's going to sell a lot. I think it's exactly the right kind of driving game for PlayStation. But I also agree with Ross that I think it's going to be challenging because it's such a demanding engine, right? And so to port that across in a meaningful way that keeps it true to its core values, which sounded awfully corporate of me, will be a challenge.
I've made the cardinal sin here of not being super clear on what the full sender dead end question was. I think I did mean it from a commercial point of view primarily because I see a success for a game developer. I'm seeing, again, just different perspectives here, right? Success for the buyer or success for the seller. I think in general it will be a success simply because Beam offers something so different to anything that we normally would see on console, even different to what we see on PC. And we are so grateful on PC for all the hardcore simulation stuff that we get. Then BeamNG comes along and allows you to just do stupid stuff like send your car flying off a massive jump or off a cliff and seeing the damage and everything happen. And for me, even when the graphics weren't as good on BeamNG a few years ago, I still found BeamNG an extraordinarily cool thing to be able to jump on and do, and just to see what would happen in certain scenarios, right? I think a small slice of focused BeamNG, focused on the fun bits without necessarily needing to do all of the crazy extra stuff that they've been doing over the past few years, on its own is enough to bring to a new audience on PlayStation specifically that will be exciting for the consumer. I think it will sell well, and I think those who play it, who have never experienced a game like this on console, will be loving all the challenges and stuff like that. It's just a load of fun. It's something different. Obviously, the execution is key here, but I do believe that it will be a success, both commercially and in terms of the sort of, I guess, consumer experience, just because they don't have all these PC versions to compare it to, right? As long as the game is clean, that's the big thing for me. As long as the physics are at least a high percentage of what they are within the PC version, and the game feels somewhat representative of BeamNG at its best, then yes, it will be a success in my end. So we'll move things on to our final section, which is our community section. Thank you, as always, for submitting questions via Discord, for leaving comments on the Spotify feeds. You can also email us as well. We have our Traxion newsletter, which goes out every week. You can get in touch with us, let us know your thoughts on any of that stuff, and of course, we will always be able to read those emails and discuss things from them in future episodes of the podcast. So we do appreciate that. A couple of questions from Spotify this week. First of all, this isn't a question, just a statement from Corey Phillips. Tom did it. He mentioned Automobilista 2, and there was much rejoicing. And now we've mentioned it twice. So expect comments next week saying, stop mentioning Automobilista 2, please. We've also then had a comment. Is this Ross that's done this? It's Porsche 987s that's left the second comment. What's wrong with using AI as long as the finished product is good? Someone wants me to dig a hole. Can I use a shovel to take the hole? They wouldn't come back and say you're supposed to do that by hand. AI is a useful tool, just like anything else. Now, it should be clear, this comment was in response to last week's podcast where you, Tom, and other Tom, and Martin, as well, making his podcast debut, discussed the fact that Crazy Taxi are using AI to assist its game development. It shows up on the game page on Steam, I believe, to say that AI has been used, but it's been clarified that this doesn't affect actual gameplay elements. It's literally just background visuals and vegetation and stuff to kind of speed up those automated processes. So yeah, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, John, I think you have left the door ajar for me to make another newsletter plug, traxion.gg/newsletter. Last week, I wrote extensively about my opinions on the use of AI in gaming, and it's a really, really hot topic. And actually, since I've written this newsletter, I've had a few email responses because you can, when I send the newsletter out, you can literally just hit reply and it comes back to me. And I had loads of people who came back and, not to oversimplify, but it was essentially AI is bad, full stop. But that is it. Any use of AI is bad, right? And if that's kind of if that's the camp you're in, as far as I can tell at the moment, there is no persuading you otherwise. However, if I can just have a small crack at it, I think there is a world in which AI allows people to be more creative. So, for example, in sim racing, there is a lot of science, i.e., if we're all trying to create a simulation, so iRacing, Assetto Corsa, rFactor 2, LMU, Automobilista 2, Race Room, they're all trying to build a simulation. Therefore, there is a correct version. There is a version that absolutely maps out the real world and the real physics and the real cars, the real tires, etc., right? So there is a truth that you're aiming towards. In my mind, that isn't art, that isn't creation, that's science. And if science can help us get to that simulation, that better tire models, better physics, better car geometry, etc., then I think that's a good thing. I think where AI is used for the creativity, whether that's the gameplay or whether that's the art style, etc., that's where I think it's a bit of a shame, because I think that's what humans are best at. And I think when I'm gaming, I feel closer to the game knowing that there is a team of probably quite interesting, cool people that are creating these moments, these little Easter eggs or whatever it is, the cutscenes or whatever, if you're playing campaigns, etc. And what Crazy Taxi did was exactly the opposite of what I would say is good use of AI. What they did was they used AI to create versions of the background, right? So I think they in the newsletter I've written out their exact quote, but essentially it was, here we go, got it. Generative AI was used to support our teams during the development of background assets for Crazy Taxi World Tour. Assets generated were still subject to review by the development team. So to me, that sounds like they're getting inspiration from AI, and then a human is doing the legwork. It should be the other way around in my mind. I think it should be the human that's coming up with the creative direction and the flair and the personality, and then get AI to do the actual clicking around and building it, right? Because that's not the exciting bit. That's not the human bit in my mind. I could go on, but I'm not going to. Read the newsletter.
I just think that we can't unlearn what we've learned so far. So we can't put AI back in its box. It's here to stay, right? So we have to use it in the best kind of way. And I kind of agree that in terms of creativity, the creativity has to be driven by the human. And like on the website, we can agree with that. Like humans write on the website. It's not AI. So yeah, we have to keep that, because if you don't keep that, then what's the point? That's my bleak conclusion.
Basically, use AI responsibly, children. Use it, but use it responsibly. I feel like we should probably round up there. Thank you for the website plug at the end there, Ross. Traxion.gg is where you'll get all of your latest racing game and sim racing news. So do head over there and keep up to date with all things racing games and sim racing. We also, of course, have the newsletter, which Tom has already spoken about. We have a Discord server, discord.gg/Traxion, I believe, to get involved in the discussion.
Traxion.gg/Discord.
Traxion.gg/Discord, that's exactly what I said. Do that and get involved. I think we've got 2,000 users on there now, which is great. And you can send in your own podcast questions. Do follow us on all of the podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, where we've got a video version, etc., etc. That's all the plugging I'm going to manage, I think, for today. So we're going to round it off. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you again next week.